What's
How's
going
it
on, man?
going?
Hey, I appreciate you doing this.
Of course, man. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great, actually. Where are you at right now? You out in New York?
Yeah, right outside the city.
Right
How
outside
about
this.
you?
Just outside Chicago. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice hoodie.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Love the store. I've never been there. I know you have, right?
Yeah, back before the pandemic.
Yeah, back before that crazy thing happened. But you still on the road with Joe right now?
No, actually, I'm not right now. I've been kind of bouncing back and forth with him.
Hmm.
It's been great. I'm really happy for him. He's doing awesome and the tour's great and the fans are fantastic. So it's really awesome. It's a great experience to be able to go out and do those theaters with him. So
Hmm.
it's cool
Yeah,
to be back seeing all the fans and stuff too,
yeah.
you
No
know?
kidding, right? My
Yeah.
my girlfriend actually, she just saw you up in Madison at the Overture.
Oh,
With her
nice.
mom and sister. Yeah, so she
Nice. Did she enjoy it?
oh yeah, had a great time. I asked her actually. So this is how I came across you, right? So every time like I'm a big fan of comedy in general, and I asked her, I said, "Tell me who's opening for Joe. Let me know. Let me know." She told me the name. I'm like, "Okay, cool." I checked you out. I listened to the Live in Burlington record.
Oh,
Freaking loved it.
wow. Thanks.
And so I'm
That
like,
was a
"Oh,
long
what's up
time
with this
ago.
guy?" Yeah, a long time ago. What was it, like 2016, I think it was.
17, I
Six.
believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Geez, I don't know. It's so, isn't it amazing though that it feels like it's like BC and I don't know about AD, AV, after vaccine,
Yeah,
before
before
COVID
pandemic. Yeah,
and
yeah,
after
yeah,
vaccine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Everything feels like a million years ago, but
It
thank you. I
does.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it was very, very good. Now, I wasn't aware because I listened to Taste Buds this morning too. I wasn't, I'm a big fan of her Practical Jokers, but I wasn't aware of really your role within
Sure.
until really this morning. So
Oh,
I'm just
I'm
playing
glad you
dumb
got to
here when I
listen to
talk
that.
about this stuff. But you guys, you're a producer for the show.
Yeah, so for the first I came onto the show the second half of season
Mm-hmm.
5 as one of the comedy producers. So the
Mm-hmm.
second half of season 5 and all of season 6, I was working as a comedy producer, which I can explain if you'd like. And then after that, I went on to do the show Inside Jokes, where the fact bubbles pop
Right,
up.
right, yeah,
And then I can go into that
yeah.
even in further detail. And then there's a show called After Party, where Joey Fatone was the host, and it was kind of like a wrap up, like the Walking Dead after
Right, right, right. Yeah,
show
yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
It was
You
sort of
break
like
down the
that.
episode. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we shot. I'll tell you a funny thing. We shot that at a really cool place in Jersey where they do a lot of those those TV shows like the First 48 and like
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
how there's always that when they come back from a commercial and the host is kind of in that like warehousey looking
Yeah, I
eerie,
know exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's almost like a haunted like that's where we shot After Party. We just took it over and built the set and created this kind of like talk show
Mm-hmm.
setting. It was really awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
It's really been a great experience. But yeah, so anything, if you want me to back up and answer any questions about the Jokers, I'd be happy to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to. So I'm figuring out. I think I found the through line between you guys. Obviously, you're all New Yorkers, so I wasn't quite sure. I mean, how far back do y'all go between all you guys, between the boys?
Well, I met uh I met Sal first through stand up and then submitted a writing packet. They had me open for them
Oh wow.
at a theater in Connecticut, and then I did a couple other gigs on the road with them and just hit it off. Got to know them all and individually just had such a blast. Like we're very similar in age.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I grew up in New England, like right outside New York, and they grew up on Staten Island, and I feel like it was just that immediate connection of I feel like they're the guys I grew up with, and I think they felt the same,
Yeah, yeah.
And then it came time to submit a writing packet to work on the show. And essentially what that was any ideas that I had that could potentially work for challenges or punishments. And I'm a massive fan of the show. I mean, enormous. Like when I wasn't doing stand up, that was like my wife and I's like date night was to like watch Jokers. And so I had a ton of ideas, and luckily they were good enough, and I got to work on the show. And what a comedy producer basically does or did um, was let's say a location, Carvel,
Hmm.
or a gym, or a you know uh, grocery store or something wants to host us or have us, or there's an opportunity to work there. There's all these different departments within the show. And the comedy producers, what we would do is kind of sit and brainstorm games that
Hmm.
the guys would be able to play. Like, what if it's a grocery store? They could be a customer, they could be a clerk, they could be the manager, they could be, stocking the shelves, all these different things, And then we kind of would brainstorm games that they could play and pitch them to the guys. And if the guys liked it, they took it and ran with it. So, and then punishments, same thing. Um, and it was just a blast. Such a great group of folks, and the whole crew and everyone is just like really amazing. And it's like a family,
Hmm.
and it still feels that way. It's amazing. It's just everyone's so engaged because it's such a unique
Oh,
experience.
no
It
doubt.
takes
Yeah.
all these different things to work to in order for it to happen. And it's the fact that it's been 10 seasons is just mind blowing, you
Yeah, it's
know?
gone by fast, it seems like. I didn't even realize there were that many seasons, but I do like watching the progression from season one all the way through the up to the upcoming season. But yeah, no, big fan of the show. And I didn't know, so you're not necessarily from New York. You're just outside. You're in Massachusetts, in New England area,
Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay,
That's where I
okay.
grew up. Yeah,
That's where you grew.
I grew up around I grew up in the New Haven, Connecticut area,
Okay.
which have you ever been out here
I
to
have
that?
not. No, no, no. Would
No,
love.
you should take a trip. It's the pizza situation's a little different than Chicago. I
Oh, this
know
is
you
war.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, tell me about your favorite pizza place. Like, what's it?
So, yeah, I from what I understand, because I have a couple. There's a couple comics that I like a lot. I had Sean Donnelly on the show, and we talked
Yeah,
about this too. I love Sean. I think he described it as New York pizza is basically pizza you could just kind of roll. Like you can roll it up if you want. You could just.
yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, you
In
fold it.
Chicago, he for it's like it's intact. You can hold it in. It's not gonna, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
like that. I like that deep dish. Mm.
You like the thick, yeah,
Oh
the
yeah,
thick
I do. I
stuff.
do. But that's all I've known. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's the amazing thing about travel too, is
Yeah.
it's so funny to see all the different, like you go out to Denver and you go to that area, there's, a lot of great Mexican and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of great, like, chilies and green
Yeah.
chili and all that. We don't even have green chili in the East Coast. So, but yeah, no, in New Haven, Connecticut, that's like the super thin pizza, very, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's delicious. But I like Chicago pie too, man.
Yeah.
I do.
It's good stuff. Very good stuff. Now, so you grew up in the New Haven area. I mean, any siblings?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of four.
Wow.
Yeah, I have two sisters and a brother that are younger than me.
Oh
So,
wow. No
yeah, we're
kidding.
super close. They're
Oh,
great.
that's good. That's good. What the
Yeah.
folks do? Mom and dad.
Oh boy. For my mom was when I was growing up, my
Mm-hmm.
mom was a hairdresser, and then she got a gig work. She was doing like working at the school and stuff like that. And then my dad worked in construction and ended up working in like water quality, like water treatment in towns and cities and stuff like
It's
that.
like
So
recreational things like that.
yeah, like stuff for like municipalities and all of
Mm.
that. So but yeah, interesting stuff. Work like hard workers and you know, grew up in like a big Italian family and
Oh geez. Okay. Pastas on Sundays.
oh
Things like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
joke we don't do the we never did like how there's like the seven fish Italians
No, I
that
would have.
ever hear about that?
No.
Christmas is like a thing where some Italian families do like seven different seafoods. It's very like,
Oh wow.
Italian, but we didn't do that. We were like macaroni and
Macaroni.
butter.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess
You
it can
know.
align with that culture because that's all I love macaroni. I love me a good. And now I don't know if you consider it quality mac and cheese, but I'll make a box of Kraft on any given day. You know what I mean?
Hey, why not? It's a good taste and
But yeah,
yeah.
man. Um, when you were growing up, like what were you into? I mean, you do any sports, things like that, music
Yeah.
involved?
big time in music, big time in sports. Grew up playing sports.
Hmm.
My family was very into sports. Grew up watching it. Comedy, sports, music was kind of always the thing. I mean,
Hmm.
like I remember as a kid watching like Monty Python and
Oh
Benny
yeah.
Hill and like that stuff with my grandfather. And then, even like old Saturday Night Live, uh old like SCTV,
What's that? I'm
um
26. I don't know.
Second City TV.
Oh, okay, okay.
That
Hmm.
was Chicago's uh that was like Chicago's improv
Improv. Yep.
show. So it was a lot of like John Candy and those guys. So that whole camp, the Belushi and Chevy Chase and that stuff. Yeah, but sports too, football and baseball. Um, had hockey in my family, but I did never learned how to skate.
Really?
So yeah, no, I had no idea how to skate. I fell once and I was like, I'm done.
That was it?
Yeah, I don't know. I never got into it.
You gave up with that? You would
Yeah,
think
I was a
after
little
like the
kid
first
and I
couple
was just
open
kind of like,
mics, you'd be like,
eh.
all right, I'm done. But falling once on ice?
I was a little kid. I didn't want to do it anymore. I liked baseball and football, and I liked skateboarding,
Okay.
and I liked hiking a lot and snowboarding and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
got a ton of injuries growing up,
Oh
like
yeah,
from
me too.
sports.
Hmm.
Yeah. What'd
Yeah.
you play growing up?
I did football for a bit, and then once I got drilled, my final year of being a starting quarterback, I gave up on it. 'Cause I'm a
Oh,
tiny dude, very tiny
yeah.
dude, but I skateboarded all the time. I got in a lot of stupid accidents with that, split my head open,
Oh
jumping off things.
no.
Yeah,
How'd you do that? Was that a
um,
on a street or
just,
half
just,
pipe?
I was being a fool on my cousin's homemade ramp, and that was like maybe 5 years old. And then when I got older, freshman, eighth grade summer, freshman, going into freshman year of high school, I fractured my spine jumping off of a
Whoa.
loading dock. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
While
So
skateboarding
yeah,
or
yeah,
just
yeah.
like parkour
Just
kind of
skateboarding,
stuff?
skateboarding.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Fractured your
And I didn't
spine.
realize it until like maybe 3 weeks after the incident. So I was like, my back is hurting. And I went in and like, how are you walking? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you were really close to like really, really putting yourself in a bad shape. So I had to walk around freaking entire year of high school almost with a back brace. Looked like a
Oh
fool.
no.
It was just like a white thing velcroed over. I'm like, could I wear it under the shirt? They're like, it's got to go over. I'm like, how about under? They're like, no, uh, over. I'm like, ah. So what I did is I just loaded it up with like skateboard stickers and shit. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's cool. That's
yeah,
neat.
but that
That's a great way to
sucked.
handle
Yeah,
it. I know
and then
so it was kind of like that turtle shell thing, right?
yeah, ugly, 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 ugly. I look like, it's like Forrest Gump with those, yeah, it was like one of those. And then I did therapy, and every time I was at therapy, I'm like, when could I get back on? When could I get back? And then when I finally was able to get back on, I got back on and go, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, well, hey, at least you got back on.
yeah, man.
Wow, I'm glad you're all right. Do you have any like residual stuff from that or are you?
Just every now and then back hurts, but yeah, no, that scared me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're all right.
Mm-hmm.
That's rough. Injuries are brutal. When I was in sixth grade, I was skateboarding on a half pipe. You know those
Mm-hmm.
spine ramps? Do you know how
Yeah.
like one half pipe then another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tried to I, I I was one of those kind of like go for it and get hurt and uh
That was me, man. Yeah.
yeah, I tried to go over the spine and I lost my footing and I snapped my there's two shin bones, your
Mm-hmm.
tibia and fibula. I
Yeah.
broke one and it broke the other.
Oh
And
shoot.
I had a plaster cast, like an old school cast up to my hip. And that was my first like big time injury. And I skateboarded after that, but I just wasn't confident on the board.
Traumatizing. Yeah.
And then in my 20s, I was snowboarding out in Colorado
Mm-hmm.
and I snapped my humerus bone in half
Jesus.
snowboarding. So I have a plate and 8 screws in my arm. And
Still?
yeah, oh yeah, it's
Oh.
forever. It's forever. Yeah, the way that it broke, they had to go in they had to move my bicep and go in that way because there's nerves that run in the back of your arm.
Jesus.
And the way that the bone broke was they were nervous to cut into there because they could
Mm-hmm.
have done nerve damage.
No
So,
kidding.
but yeah, so I just stick with like horseshoes and
Yeah.
cornhole
Comedy
and
now. Yeah.
comedy.
When, yeah, when did that come in the picture for you? I mean, because there's always, I always like, it's interesting to see kind of when that came like cross your mind? Obviously, you grew up watching it. We all grew up watching it, but putting it like beginning to do it. How did that kind of come to fruition for you?
Well, beginning to do it, actual stand up was I moved back. I was living out in Colorado and I
Mm-hmm.
moved back east and I met this girl that I was talking to and we went to a comedy club, Caroline's, the one that
Oh,
just
okay.
recently closed. Had you ever been there?
Wait, Caroline's on Broadway?
Yeah.
That just closed?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like for good?
For good,
No
yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, it's the first place I ever did stand up.
No, wow.
Yeah. So I went there and on the wall there was a sign that said new talent night.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always, Jerry Seinfeld's documentary Comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar?
Uh, I'm a big fan of Nate Bargatze, and he references that all the time, so I got to watch it.
You really should. It's an unbelievable. I think it's on Netflix right now.
Okay.
Um, it just basically is Seinfeld going through. He had just finished his show and he was going to return to stand up and craft a new hour, and he
Mm-hmm.
like does it from the start. And he goes to the cellar and hangs out with Colin Quinn and goes to see Cosby live, goes to see like all the goes to the um museum of the recorded history
Mm-hmm.
and listens to old like prior albums and just the whole thing. And meanwhile, in conjunction, there's another comic, Orny Adams, who is kind of coming up. And I saw this in a theater, and what struck me was the hang, like him sitting around the cellar talking with Colin Quinn and like just
Like at the
workshopping.
tables.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just workshopping and kind of like, a couple jokes turned into more, which turned into 15, which turned into, and I always had that in the back of my mind, like, wow, how interesting. Like, you don't even
Right.
really know how to start. You know what I mean? Like, you just
Mm-hmm.
like, to me in the beginning, it felt like comedians were just, I don't know, like gods, like just they came from another planet. Like, how do you even break into that, you
Right.
know? And I'm sitting at Caroline's and it says new talent night. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I went to the bathroom and I walked over to like the bartender and I'm like, what's that new talent thing? And they said you could sign up. It's like it's like a class that you could take, and then at the end you have a graduation show or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no way. So I did it. I signed up for it. And there was this amazing woman that ran the course, Linda Smith. And it wasn't like she wasn't teaching you how to be funny. It was legitimately like, this is how you take the microphone out of the stand, and this is the light, and this is how, you know what I mean? And like kind
Mm-hmm.
of the stage, and just like learning a little bit about like joke crafting and stuff like that.
Cadence, rhythm, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just kind of more like, and I never paid attention. I was a horrible student and
Yeah.
I was just wanted to goof off and have a good
That's
time.
me.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
she kind of she kind of straightened my butt out. She was kind of like, listen, you're funny. You got like, it's you're likable, but
Mm-hmm.
don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. Like if you're serious about this. And essentially what it was, are you familiar with The Bringer?
The
Do you know what
bringer.
that is? A Bringer is a show where like
You're
you
outside
have
flyers, things like that.
well, that's like you're barking, but like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So a bringer show essentially is you have to invite audience members in order to do time. So that was part of this, where like you say, hey, here's our graduation show. Come and watch me do stand up. And you do
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes and so the crowd is like so fired up. It's everyone's friends and family.
Yeah.
And you go up and everyone's new and everyone's nervous and they have a professional come on and do like time to kind of like special guest appearance
Sure.
type
Yeah.
thing. And I remember going up and doing my first 5 minutes and I sort of kind of like blacked out. Like I don't really remember being up there, but I got I had the tape afterwards and I was like, oh wow. And it was good, it went well, and it went too well.
Too well.
And well, because I thought that was comedy. I thought,
You're like
oh, stand up's a
I'm
breeze.
set. I'm set now.
I was like I was Mary Tyler Moore. I went out in the street and threw my hat in the air and was like, watch out, New York. But then I went and did that material, you know, at an open mic a couple of
I'm like,
like
why
a
isn't
week
it
later.
working?
and then people are walking out, and I'm like, oh, it's because the
The
audience isn't
friends, yeah.
friends. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I said, oh, that's comedy. And then I
Ah,
immediately got the bug, and that was it. Really, that literally, like, the first time was amazing, the second time was equally terrible, and that's when I fell in love with it. And that reminded me of the whole kind of like the Seinfeld, like the crafting it and working it from the start and
hmm.
that whole thing. And I just remember driving by the clubs, like literally just driving by the Cellar, driving by Gotham, driving by Caroline's and Stand Up New York and New York Comedy Club and the
Hmm.
Strip and all those rooms, and kind of just being like, one day, like one day I'm gonna, one day, and you just gotta stick to it, and it
Yeah.
happens, So it was, yeah, it was pretty fascinating because it opens up a world of you find like-minded. I guess it's kind of like this thing where, if you're really into music, or if you're really
Right.
into baseball, or if you're really into Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever it may be, like whatever your thing is, right? When you find other people that are like-minded
Hmm.
or as passionate, right? At whatever level, you found a community, right? And
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
important as hell, because it's like I found other comics, and
Hmm.
I'm like, how long have you been doing it? How long have
How
you
have
been,
you been?
and we kind
Yeah.
of just see people on their different like trajectory, and it's just unbelievable to be like, oh, cool. Like I found it's like a new club, as
Sure.
it's like being a kid again. And it really felt amazing. And yeah, it's kind of interesting to look back on, and kind of the whole process is just wild.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Who are some of the guys you came up with? Did you come up with the with the list, Donald? I mean, what wave did you come up
Well,
with?
yeah, yeah. I mean, so they're living right outside of New York
Hmm.
was a blessing, because I kind of had the best of both worlds,
Sure. Yeah.
like you could go into the city, and there were two different worlds within three different worlds, really, within the New York comedy scene. And then there was the road, which essentially is anything but
Your
New
home
York and
base.
LA. And yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I had the ability to work at like your smaller city, New Haven, Hartford, Providence,
Hmm.
Boston, stuff like that, and work with like headliners that were coming
Right.
through town. Sebastian Maniscalco, Bobby
Awesome.
Kelly, Big J, Dom Herrera, um, shit, bunch of people, and then you go into the city, and there was like the open mic scene,
Hmm.
and then there was like the alt rooms that were basically like bar shows and cupcake stores that after hours would have shows. I mean, literally anywhere where there were seats, there were shows, and
Mm.
comics would produce shows and come up with fun names, and those shows built and built and built and developed a life of their own. So you're kind of
Right.
able to hit, and then there were the clubs. So it kind of was like this thing of it's like circles, and you kind of work your
Sure. Yeah.
way into different, I remember one of the first shows that I did was at like a laundromat. It was like a laundromat that had like a DJ. It was so weird, but so cool, come to think of it. Like, and I haven't thought about it in so long, but like a dude saw that there was a laundromat and visualized a show.
And saw
And
chairs. I'm like, we could put people
yeah,
there.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like I never thought about it. Like there are chairs. And it was kind of funny because like people would bring in coolers, and you do shows and stuff,
Yeah.
and a DJ set up a booth, but there would be people doing their laundry.
Suggestive $5 donation.
Yeah, totally. So it was an interesting setup for sure, but it was wherever you could do it, you do it,
Hmm.
Interesting because the pandemic felt like that again.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like the first show I did during the pandemic was at a drive-in movie
Ah,
theater.
you did one of those?
Yeah, well, I did. I opened up for Sal, from the Jokers at a
Hmm.
at a movie theater a drive-in in Cape Cod,
Hmm.
and it was surreal.
Did
Like,
it throw you off a bit with
oh my
your?
God.
I mean, everything's different. It's like learning comedy again. You're learning, it's like that class you took at Caroline's, looking at the lights. This is the mic. This is it's like you're starting from scratch because this is different.
Well, and also I wasn't looking at people. I was looking at
Looking at headlights and
cars,
cars.
headlights.
Yeah, yeah,
So I was kind of like, trying to joke around and do sort of like
yeah,
car, like headlight crowd work. I'm like, this
yeah,
guy's got a light out. This guy knows what I'm talking. Like, high
yeah.
beam me if you know what I'm talking about. And people would be flashing their lights and beeping their horns and stuff. But that was a weird moment where I remember like going back up on stage and all I had was the jokes from before the pandemic.
Sure.
You realized how silly a lot of the setups to jokes sounded, where it's like, oh, I was in the airport, and it's like, no, you weren't.
No,
Airports
yeah.
are closed, and it's like, oh, I was in an Uber, and it's like, no, you weren't. Ubers are disgusting, and that's where COVID is. So it was very weird. There was a couple experiences in the beginning that were strange. We had plexiglass,
Oh, yeah.
um, like the Pope Mobile, kind of like penalty box, at the cellar when we were starting coming back, just because that was the rule.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was so interesting because if the light would hit the plexiglass and your reflection would be looking back at you, but it
Oh,
was like
that's
the
weird.
garbage pail kid version of you looking at you bombing. So it was like this ego
Why am I
killer.
even doing this?
It's just hilarious because nothing's working and your own reflection's looking at you and it's all distorted. And it's like, this is just weird.
Hmm. Yeah.
But we're back,
We are back. I think I don't know. I think comedy became stronger and better, I think, post COVID. Not saying that it wasn't, but I felt like COVID did something to it. I really do. I feel like the clubs, I think everyone obviously, it was the first sort of entertainment that was accessible, during. Because you're not going to ease in and go mosh at a concert. You could do comedy though. You could space people out at tables. I mean, you're not standing up shoulder to shoulder, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
when I
very
really
true.
start to get into it. I start to really get into comedy during the pandemic. That's all I did. I watched all Comedy Central presents the half hour, every single episode they ever put out.
Oh,
That's when I
really? The old
that's when I
ones?
got into it. I wasn't. I mean, I've liked comedy before. I was a big fan of Mark Maron when he had a show on IFC, but I never watched stand up until the beginning of pandemic, and now I'm obsessed with it. But yeah, I think COVID helped. I think there was a big surge for comedy. Maybe I'm looking at it from the perspective of someone who's never was really into it beforehand, but from what I've seen and heard from other comedians I've talked to, like Paul Verzi, when
Yeah.
I did photos for him, it seems like everyone was saying that COVID did something for comedy.
Well, it did. And I think that a lot of us, I mean, again, I can't really speak for anyone but
Hmm.
myself, but I think we all, I'm guessing,
Sure.
had those moments where it was kind of like, what do we do now?
Right. Yeah.
Because it just kept going and
Hmm.
going. COVID was like, man, I remember the last set I did before the pandemic, like it was pretty much hitting New York hard.
Hmm.
And I was at the Village Underground, the Comedy
The
Cellar Village
seller. Yeah.
Underground, and we were doing like very, very small crowds. And we like the microphones were being like Lysoled in a
Yeah.
bucket, and everybody had their own mic, and everyone was spaced out. And we were all kind of like looking at each other like, what? Like, never did before did you think about the microphone? You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, it's just the microphone. And then now you're like, you know,
Whoa.
who were you near and all
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and then
Hmm.
we just got off the Impractical Joker cruise, which
Oh
is
yeah. Yeah.
like, can you imagine that now? So, and then we kind of went into lockdown, and it was just
Hmm.
this thing of solitary. You check on people and you text and you see how people are doing, and but then a year goes by, and a year and a half goes by, and 2 years go by, and it's like now little by little things are starting to trickle open, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh my God, like I'm rusty and I don't know what to do, and spending all this time alone, and that's hard for all of us because I think we
Sure.
get into this for the community as much as it's a solo sport, but it's
Hmm.
also a team
Right.
sport,
Yeah.
you know. And man, I'll tell you when it was like to go back and hang at the club for the first time again and just see people, and there was a real sense of community
Right.
and like brother and sisterhood where you just
Yeah.
want to give someone a hug and all of that. And I think that folks that kind of came back, uh, it was this thing of kind of like we're lucky.
Right.
I feel that it was like this thing like we're very lucky to have this, and it's to be taken. kind of seriously. And yeah, a lot changed. And I also think that the format changed. I think that the way that people digest entertainment changed. Everything was on the phone and everything was,
Sure.
we kind of had to like, you look at other folks and you're like, oh, wow, that guy's captioning his videos and this person's putting up those things or that podcast that came out or, and it was all these different, you have to just pivot. You have
Mm-hmm.
to adapt and react. There's a club, New York Comedy Club. They ran a room in Southern Connecticut that was outside.
Oh
So
wow.
it was outside of a hotel. And this is a really interesting, as a comedy fan, just imagine this. So in the back of this hotel was this big field that was 2 football fields long, maybe, right?
Wow.
And they put a stage down the hill, kind of
Mm-hmm.
towards the woods, and all the way across the field was someone's backyard. And the guy would stand out on his back porch
Mm-hmm.
and grill and cook. And he was far enough away, but everyone would come with lawn chairs and put chairs down. And like Bill Burr did it. Dave
Oh, oh
Attell
yeah.
did it. I think Brian Regan maybe had done it.
Love
We
that
did it.
guy.
Roy
Yeah.
Wood, like all these different, like everyone from New York came. Mark did it. Sam did it. Joe. I think everyone just like people would go up in waves and come to this field.
Mm-hmm. It's like
And
Woodstock.
it really kind of was, dude. And I always would like show up and think about that guy that was sitting on his back porch. And I'm like, man, I hope what an amazing gift to him.
Yeah,
I,
no
I hope
kidding.
he's a comedy fan because it's just like he goes outside and looks on his patio and he's like, oh, David Tell's in my backyard.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I'll probably just hang out and, make a drink and sit and watch. So, but yeah, it was amazing to come back.
Mhm. When you started, who were some of the guys that took, like, who were some of the first guys that took you on the road?
Um, Sebastian Maniscalco is the first.
Awesome. Yeah.
He brought me to do 2 shows with him at Bananas in New Jersey. So I
Okay.
worked with him. There's a club in Providence, Rhode Island called the Comedy Connection, and I got
Mm-hmm.
to start working there with that's where I met a lot of, like I said before, Bobby,
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian, Jay, Herrera, like all these guys. And Sebastian, I worked with him there. We got along really well. And then I worked with him again at Mohegan Sun, the
Okay.
casino.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I got a couple gigs coming up. Why don't you come do them with me? And I did a couple shows with him. And it was amazing. This was at like a club in a hotel
Oh wow.
way before the Garden and way before, all of that. And I learned a lot from watching him because
Mm-hmm.
like he got off stage and he ran to the door and shook every hand and took every picture and
Wow.
gave everybody the attention like they were the only person in the room. And then he would like run up and change and put on another, another outfit or
Mm-hmm.
whatever and be ready for the next show. And just like it was just me and him. And I did like 25 or a half hour and he did an
Yeah.
hour
Yeah.
and just he left it all on stage, and it was just really, really fascinating to see like where he was then and how he treated everyone. And then how many years later he's like selling out the Garden.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because he did what he did. He planted
Did it
those
the right way.
seeds
Yeah.
and he treated people like people knew he really respected them and thanked them for being there and all that. And that was a really interesting lesson. And then I went on the road with Jay a bunch, Big Jay. He took me under his wing and I kind of did a whole bunch of road
Ogre
stuff
was it
with
Big J
him.
Ogerson?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did a bunch with him and again, just learned a lot about, he just kind of gave me the opportunity. It's important in anything you do, but I think in stand-up music, things where kind of like you have to be put over by your mentors.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, when people like you and they trust you and they give you the permission to grow and fall on your face and break your leg and
Right.
all that stuff, like it's really, really important. Dave Attell has always been my favorite person, comic, whatever, and
Really.
Jay recommended me to him and I got to know Dave and got to go on the road with Dave and take long road trips with him and just sort of I don't know, like it's my favorite comic, and I now I'm hanging with him, and now we're
It's
doing the
unreal.
road, and now
Yeah.
and there's like it's a real special thing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. Some of my favorite like, thoughts of stand up is like being on stage and like looking over and like Dave's laughing, or the Impractical Jokers are there laughing, or
Yeah.
like people who made me laugh so much, you
Now
know.
I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting feeling, and it's kind of validating. Is that the word? It
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like you're like,
Sure.
because the whole time nobody, there's no like
You're like, yeah, yeah. This is why I'm doing it. I'm doing
yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And it's
Okay.
like he's the only one, like
Yeah.
these people are laughing, and God bless them and I love them.
But
But
this
that's the
guy's
guy.
laughing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like a thing. Like I remember like Jay telling me, like, if you can make the staff laugh, that's
Yeah.
big,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because they see comedy every night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they see it every night.
That's
And it's
true.
like,
Very
if you
true.
can
Because
make
I
them
do
laugh, then
photos. I do photos. I haven't done them in a bit. I gotta get back to doing it. But I used to do photos for Zany's Rosemont all the time, and
oh,
just
cool.
yeah, yeah. And I realized that because I was there doing photos all the time, and obviously you're making the people in the crowd laugh. But when you had those people before they hit the back door to go in the kitchen, stop and just look at you to watch a couple of minutes, and you got the yeah. That's when
That's
you're doing
big.
good. Yeah, you get the whole roof stopped. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question
Yeah.
about photography? Because I'm fascinated by
Mm-hmm.
any type of performing arts. I'm a big fan of photography, and I'm trying to
Awesome.
learn how to do it actually. But
Me too, still. And I do it. I do it. I've been doing it now for. I think got interested in it in like 2015. Got like a really crappy camera, and everything I've ever done is just trial and error, trial and error. Worked my way up. Then I got a job at a music theater, a
oh yeah,
theater just outside Chicago called the Arcada, and that was where I really took that step. I was able to, when I got out of work, I worked in the box office. I was able to photograph. Uh, Musically, I like the guy. I was able to shoot Ted Nugent. I was able to shoot Jimmy Vaughn. I was able to shoot Tom Costantin, the original pianist from Grateful Dead.
yes,
I was
yes.
able to shoot all these guys, and I was clocking out of work, and I was walking right in front of the stage and just shooting. That's where I started to get my knack for photography, and that was probably the big move for me. That was in 2018. I started working there. Pandemic hit. All the staff got laid off, and then I pivoted into shooting comedy, and now I do shoot photos for Chicago Fire of the MLS. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm fascinated by the entire event of things,
Hmm.
going on the road with the Jokers and going on the road with Joe, and these theaters. I really like that these theaters have become a thing as it relates to comedy. It's almost
Hmm.
kind of like it's always been that, but I feel like there's every city now has this resurrected theater. Like there's all
Hmm.
these new pop-up theaters and
Right.
stuff. And we get there early and we kind of see the whole production of it. We see
Sure.
them wheel out the carts of beer, and we see them sweeping and testing the lights, and then the employees start showing up, and the staff starts showing up, and the photographers, and all of it. And it's all these different parts make up this event, this
Hmm.
one moment for these people. And if you watch the whole thing build up and happen and then break down, you really kind of develop a huge appreciation for it.
Yes. Hmm.
And you don't take it for granted. And I love, there's a lot of downtime. Like I'll go do 20 minutes to open for Joe.
Hmm.
And then there's an hour that he's on. And then there's meet and greet time. And then I love to talk with like this oldest person that works there, just about like, who did you see come through, and,
Sure. Yeah.
whatever. And they all have great stories. But photography is always a thing that I kind of like. I'm always self-conscious about just, because you got to put out like, your headshots and
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Hmm.
And maybe you can understand this from a photography perspective. I always like the pictures and action shots,
Oh
like
yeah.
even baseball cards. When I was a kid, I liked when they were like sliding into second and there's a
Oh
cloud of
yeah.
dust. I don't like when they're on one knee with the bat. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I kind of thoroughly enjoy like the action shots. So I always have a hard time like posing
Sure.
for a headshot. I'm always just like, yeah, take pictures and then like we'll go through them. But it's interesting and you also kind of get this thing like, why would anybody want to take a picture of me? But it's, you know, it's really neat when that happens. And I've gotten to know so many amazing, talented
Hmm.
photographers, music photography, and the guys that shoot the Joker's cruise, um, and like amazing comedy photographers in New York City. Oh,
Hmm.
it's just it's such a
It is.
cool
It's
thing.
amazing. I wish I could do something with it. Like the full. I mean, if I could do something with photography full time, I'd drop everything and do it. But it's just trying to find find the right avenue for it. I think my biggest inspiration for photographers within comedy. I could be saying her last name wrong, but she used to do everything at the store. Pamela Sassone, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
She yeah,
I
one
don't
one
think
of
I've ever met her.
she did all the stuff at the comedy store uh for a while. Just amazing. I mean, just the people you could do each and every night.
Does she do that one at the foot of the steps when it's kind of like that almost fisheye?
She may have done that one.
Those are neat. Do you know those ones that I mean?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
like a very like iconic pose kind of.
yeah,
Um yeah, it's really neat to think about all the, and I think about that too from like
mm-hmm,
animators, right? Like
yeah,
people who can take like a bit and turn it into a cartoon,
sure.
which is now,
That's
what do you call it?
fascinating.
Like formatted for I think it's amazing. And that stuff really is it's neat to hear people talk about how important it was for them to come back and like see stand up.
Sure,
You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like that's another amazing thing I think with, that I don't take for granted really is, these meet and greets now.
mm-hmm,
Joker fans coming up and saying that like, the show got me through this and that, and then, like stand up got me through, and then during the pandemic I got to listen to this, and it's really a fascinating thing. And
mm-hmm.
I mean, you said you're what, 26?
I turn 27 next month. Yeah,
All right, happy early birthday.
yeah, man,
I
rock
didn't start
on.
stand up until I was 29 or
So you're
30.
saying I still got a chance? No, I'm joking.
You have more than a chance, dude. You're doing it. You're
No,
doing it.
I've never done stand up. I've done. I just became obsessed with it, and I like to talk. I like to dissect and learn how how people navigate through it, how their process, how it works for them. And I like talking to comedians. That's the big thing. But yeah, no, I did one open mic and it was humiliating, but it was forced because there was a bunch of comedians who were hosting open mic at a little venue, and at the end of the night, the guy goes like this: "All right, we got one last comedian. You've seen him at the Comedy Store. You've seen him at the Improv. You've seen." And I'm like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And then he said my name, and I was,
Oh no.
yeah, and I was wearing this hoodie at the time. So mind
Oh
you, people in
man.
the room were hitting each other on the shoulder, going, "Could you believe this?" And I got up there and I stalled. I just talked for 5 minutes. Humiliating, absolutely
Oh
humiliating.
man.
But I did it.
Jeez.
Yeah, I did it
But you
once.
went up. You went
Yeah,
up. You didn't have
yeah,
to.
because I didn't know who was going up, and then I found out he said
It
my
was
name.
you.
Yeah, it's horrible. But you know, so like I told you in the beginning, I was listening to the Live in Burlington. Absolutely loved that. Um, this was many years ago, but you got another one coming up now soon. You're doing another taping. What, in May? I think.
Yeah, I'm doing one in May. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
really
man.
excited. It's gonna be great. And it's a lot of it's I was gonna do one in 2020,
Tough. Yeah.
but and I'm glad though, because you let a couple of those jokes just sort of die
You
off.
let that
And
material then build, then you get something different where it's not all COVID
yeah,
related.
yeah. And this is something that like, the reason why I'm really excited about this one is because it's gonna sound strange maybe, but I'm excited about this one because I'm excited about the next one. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, you're
I,
excited to put to rest this chapter, this material. You're excited to start something new.
Yeah, yeah. I heard Chris Rock say in an interview, which was really awesome. He said every single year he asks himself, like, who am I this year?
Mm,
And I'm like, wow, that's neat
that's
because it's
crazy.
like,
Yeah.
but that's awesome because you're embracing the fact that like the only real thing is change. The
Sure.
only thing we're guaranteed is that everything is going to change.
Hmm.
Nothing stays the same. And that's something that's hard to like accept
Hmm.
as a human, I think, and especially with comedy, things come and go, you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
it's like I get, everybody I'm sure gets like, you don't want to be you beat yourself up about stuff.
Right.
Am I too old? Am I
Yeah.
this? Am I that? I
Yeah.
haven't done what I wanted to yet or whatever. And you forget all the great stuff you've done. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's human nature and it's probably
Sure.
every career, I'm sure that, you know, Tom Petty was like, I could have done more. You know what I mean?
You're like, what do you mean?
Yeah, you're
But I
Tom Petty,
think
dude.
you have a far greater appreciation for those at that point who are saying things like that. 'Cause you're like, what do you mean? Like you don't have to do more. They're like, no, 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 but I do. And I realized that because on my birthday last year, I went and saw Mark Maron at the Barrymore in Madison, Wisconsin, and he did this thing which was amazing. My jaw dropped towards the end of the night. He said, "Can I go to the green room? I'll be right back. I want to get my notebook of jokes I'm working on." I'm like, what? And
Oh,
he just ran through and he was working out things that he was working on. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world to see someone. I mean, he's doing it to still be like trying to get to see if it will work. You know what I mean? Like that.
sure.
I
Oh, yeah.
like the appreciation and just like wow. Like there are people like I don't know. It's like these people are still working. Like it's not. They're still grinding. You know.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'll tell you, please get to New York someday and spend a week and hit the different rooms. And, you know, one of the honors of working at the Cellar has been watching Chris Rock go up on stage with literally nothing and just look up at and go like, what is there to talk about? What is there to talk about? And he's just like literally it's like the birth of, not even the birth, it's like the conception and like the
Sure.
first trimester. And then like, you watch it grow
Mm-hmm.
and then he's doing that hour and it's like I'm watching it on HBO or whatever and it's like, yeah, I remember when he kind of, you know,
Work that out. Yeah.
was figuring it out. And I remember there being one time when I was hosting and I brought him up and this woman afterwards came up to me outside and she goes, "Did Chris know that he was going on because he didn't seem ready?" And I'm like, "You just watched I said in
That's
a
the joy
year,
of that.
I said you're gonna be she's like, "Oh, so he was just like practicing on us?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Practice.
practicing, you know?"
Yeah.
But like it's really fascinating and it's interesting that you say that because isn't it wild the different a band gets to sit in a room and go like, did you watch the Beatles did you watch Get Back
I did not. That's the one with
with the
the
Disney, it's on the Disney
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
app and it's the one that Peter Jackson made
Mm-hmm.
about Let It Be.
Yeah.
They're sitting in a room, the four greatest whatever, and they're just plucking away and this one looks at this one and picks it up and then like Get Back just appears out of
Sure.
the,
Yeah.
comics don't really have a a jam room. You know what I mean? Like you got to go up and just fall flat on your face,
Right.
trust your instinct and trust your intuition that this thought is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to just let it sort of blossom into whatever the hell it becomes, or you let it go. And then there's tacky thoughts that just stick around. But like, it's amazing to see. Yeah, that's awesome that you appreciate that, Marin. That's the thing that stuck out. It wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
finished bits. It was you know, and he's a guy who, I mean, he lays it all out there. I
Oh
mean,
God,
I
does
love
he
him.
ever? Yeah.
You're a big fan of him. I can, you like
I
his,
do. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I do. I think I like the way that he could converse with people too. I mean, I think
yeah,
it's very hard to, um, say what there's a lot of people who, speak whatever they want about Rogan as well. But there's two people in the world that I don't understand how they can plop anyone across from them and talk to them in a way that they do. Uh, Rogan, I mean, they have conversations with people for 5 hours, some of them, and that conversation never dies. That's, I don't know. It's just
it's
talent.
magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is, man.
That's something you're born with.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, I think that Marin WTF, we have that in common.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and dove headfirst into like very old interviews of his and kind of like, um, I was doing a solo podcast before doing this one I do now. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of looked at like what solo podcasts are out there that I can look at as like sort of a lesson.
Sure. Yeah.
And I listened to his and not that it was solo, but the way that he would kind of monologue in the beginning.
Yeah, I like that. Uh
Um,
huh.
and then Bill Burr's, of course, and Monday Morning Podcast, which is just hilarious
Mm-hmm.
because I love him. But yeah, and then I spent a lot of time by yourself walking the dog or whatever during the pandemic, and I would just listen to interview after interview after interview, and like, yeah, he gets like he peels the layers of the onion back
Mm-hmm.
quick and
Yeah.
gets deep, and I thoroughly, when we were communicating before, I thoroughly enjoy that, and I'm like, yeah, this is great because I'm like actually listening to the Sacha Baron Cohen episode that he
Okay.
did.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, 5 minutes in, they're deep into a story.
Yeah. And you're like,
And the
wait,
Rosie
wait,
per
this just started.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, wow, did I miss it? Did I like accidentally fast
Yeah, yeah.
forward? Or the Rosie Perez one I thought was like brilliant. I
It's
don't know if you've listened to
ridiculous.
that one, but I mean it's just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a and he's a guy who will sit on the stool with a notepad and kind of
Yeah.
work it out, and I follow that as a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Create You have to create opportunities to fail.
Right. Yeah.
You have to create shows. I'm doing a couple shows now that I produce. One's called Undercooked and one is called Hot Seat,
Mm-hmm.
where it's literally just permission to fail. Go up. The crowd knows what it is, and it's like a pro open mic kind of where you just go try new stuff, tell
That's
stories,
awesome.
whatever, talk to the crowd, like talk through the bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it helps you develop a sense of patience with yourself too.
Sure.
That like because if you just let something sit just long enough and then you find where the next thing goes, it's like, all right, neat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay,
it's
cool.
it's fun, man.
Yeah. The one other thing I wanted to talk about too was so when I was just yeah, I like to do not it may sound bad, but minimal research, right? Just talking points, but when I do these interviews and things like that,
Yeah.
I came across the your podcast that you do with Oteil, and
Yeah.
man, I got excited. I mean, I was getting giddy. I love the Dead, and I listened to the Mayor episode, and boy, oh boy, I was just grinning ear to ear. Mayor's my
Nice.
biggest inspiration musically. I got to
Oh
shoot
yeah.
photos for him once. Uh, Never talked to the man, but this listening to him on the show with you, I mean, the way he just I mean, he's just a genius everything he says, I think is genius. But how did that show come to be? I mean, how did you and Oteil kind of get this thing going, man?
uh the pandemic. To be honest with you, I mean, he was in New York. I had a podcast called Amigos, which is like a
Mm-hmm.
solo podcast I do, which is basically comedians and musicians talking
Sure.
music and comedy. Those are my two favorite things.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of similarities. And I, someone who was helping me knew a manager that worked with Oteil, and she said, "I think I might be able to get you an interview with Oteil when he comes into New
You're
York
like,
for
what?
yeah." And I'm like, okay. So it was supposed to be about a half hour, 40-minute interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to his hotel in between the Garden, Madison Square Garden, and Nassau Coliseum Dead shows. And I went in and we met and we talked. And man, 2.5, 3 hours later, we're still talking. And we haven't even scratched the surface. We like immediately clicked as friends on like levels of like, weird like synchronistic stuff and spiritual stuff and
Right.
all that crap. And immediately just became tight. And we said, man, we should really do something together, but who has the time, you know?
Right.
And then the pandemic gave us the time. And we started doing he came back to the city. This is nuts. Want to hear this? He came back to the city right before the pandemic. The Allman Brothers were playing
Oh
the
man.
Garden. And I was doing a headline at the Cellar, working out like an hour, and he came to see me, and we hung out, had dinner, and this white pickup truck, goes racing down the street with three wheels, and there's like the front passenger side tires gone, and all these
What?
sparks are flying, and it almost hit Oteil, and I had to like, Oteil started climbing a fence to get out of the way, and I like ducked down and was gonna like try to lay underneath it if it rolled over at us. It was like a movie, dude. It was crazy. And then bang, the pandemic hit. So that's like how our 2020 year started. Was we almost got run over by a three-wheel truck. Um, And then he went and did the garden, got like the whole world got
Mm-hmm.
COVID.
Yeah.
So we said, let's do this. People are home.
Right.
Like, let's try to talk to the people that we want to talk to. And we made a list of folks that we wanted to talk to, and they were home. They were available. And I was just talking about it today that like freaking pandemic's going on, and I'm sitting in my living room talking to Bob Weir.
Yeah.
And then
Unbelievable.
I shut the laptop, dude, and I'm like,
Like, what just happened?
freaking Bob Weir just like what?
Yeah.
And it was really, really unbelievable. And it just grew a life of its own. And, 136 episodes now we've done. And
It's amazing, man.
dude, it's great. And
You
it's
know,
and
you know
go
what?
ahead.
Before you finish that thought, when you said the whole thing of sitting on a computer talking to Bob Weir and then he closed it, I had that same thing because I had a blues podcast that I did strong, almost 2 episodes a week called the Monday Morning Blues. I don't do it anymore, but I had Zappa on. I was able to have him on.
Who'd
I
you have,
had
Dweezil?
Dweezil on. I had
Oh, dude.
Tom Hainbridge on. He's a producer for the Stones and all that. I had Bobby Rush on, a blues musician. I had all those guys on, and like same thing as you said about Weir. I shut it and I go, I just talked to fucking Dweezil Zappa, and Dweezil was cool because that was the first interview he did when Eddie Van Halen passed away, and that was big for me because when Frank passed away, Eddie was the first person right by Dweezil's side, and
Whoa.
so like
Good for you, man.
I reached out to his wife Megan because I know I did photos for him at the theater I worked at. I said, "Is he ready? Can we talk?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll do it, we'll do it." And he was telling me the whole story. It was crazy, man. So when Eddie passed away, how we found out was so Dweezil was redoing the studio at the home, and he was putting up acoustic paneling in the studio, and the ceiling was white, and he was actually putting up the acoustic panels in the pattern of one of Eddie's guitar, the white guitar with the black stripes.
Oh
And so he was
yeah.
doing it, and as he was laying the paneling in that design of the guitar, his phone kept going bing, 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 and he looked at the phone. It was a text saying that Eddie passed away. And I
Whoa.
was like, what the heck? Yeah, man, it's crazy. But that's what the pandemic gave us, that opportunity for you. You know what I mean?
I'm getting chills hearing that
Oh,
story
I
because I'm a
was.
bit like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's Frank. I'm a massive Zappa fan. We
Hmm.
need to talk more. We need to connect and talk
Yeah.
music. And that's great. I saw one of the first things I saw after the pandemic was Dweezil doing Zappa Plays Zappa. They did Hot
Yeah.
Rats, and it was that's one of my favorite albums.
Hmm.
And God, he's good.
So
God,
good.
he's good. And his band was tight. And
Hmm.
I got to chat with Moon. She's really cool. Moon Unit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, Frank's amazing. There's certain people, him, Patrice, Geraldo,
Oh,
Greg
wow.
Giraldo, that I would love to have. I wish they were around so we could hear what they thought about what's going on today.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I would have loved to have heard Zappa's take on like, Trump and all this, whatever, all this crap. Like it just
Yeah.
he would have been hilarious to listen to. But the thing with O'Teal and I, like too, like he said when he was on the road, he escaped music and all that by listening to stand up.
Hmm.
And when I'm on the road and I'm alone in a hotel, I turn to music.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was really kind of neat to be like, wow, how cool is that? You know what I mean? And yeah, it's like I found a big brother in him too. Like we've just become like incredibly tight. And I'm just thrilled to that it saved me during the pandemic
Oh,
for sure,
gosh. I
man.
don't
It
know
gave me
what
that
I do.
purpose.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Well, you're excellent at what you do, and
Well,
like you
yeah.
you've got a great. I mean, no, I mean just listening and it's this thing. Just because everyone does it doesn't mean everyone's good at it. You
Sure.
understand
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
And I
Anyone
kind
could
of
buy a
think
mic and plug it in and do something.
right, right. But the idea of you, we'll get a little meta for the listeners here. The idea that like you don't want to I don't, man, I don't. Sometimes we have people on, and I'm like, I want to research them, and I'm like, no, no. Something tells me like, just follow your gut. Go in. You know
Yeah.
enough about them to start the conversation.
Hmm.
Because if you're a Marin fan, and if you're a fan of people that like get the story
Sure.
out, they're not. You can only do so much. Like if you're like, oh yeah, Impractical Jokers, like sure, I could tell you about the impractical, like that
Yeah,
working
but
for
that's
them, but
yeah. Yeah.
it's not surface level. It's a honor, but it's like you're not going to find out much.
About you.
Yeah, and that's neat. To now we're like here we are. To me, it's like we're an hour in, and now we're getting to it. Like
Yeah.
you're a Zappa fan, like you're a blues guy. Like that's the shit that I like to,
Oh yeah.
dive right in and get to know that stuff. So it's it's a nice opportunity to really have chats with people who I'm blown away by some of the people that we've talked to.
Yeah.
Absolutely floored some of the stories.
I
My
always
God,
thought like why are you talking to me? Like why are you doing this? Like that's how
dude,
I thought too.
so many
Um
times.
yeah, it was
Why are
and it
you
was really
talking to me?
cool. It was yeah, it was unbelievable. And there were certain moments I thought in the Zappa one that was cool because there were certain things that I was listening to and like, hey, when your dad did this on that, like, yes, that's what he was. I'm like, oh, that's was what he was going for. So,
Yeah, isn't it neat to be able to ask those questions? Like I was able to ask Bob Weir about Jerry Garcia. I'm a Grateful Dead. Like the
oh,
Grateful Dead's my
I
like
figured
heart and
that out.
soul.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
just worship the Grateful Dead. And to be able to ask him about Jerry, and he's like, Jerry's here. He visits me in dreams and this and that. And I was just like, God damn it. I can't believe this. If there's one person that you can't that's gone that you could have talked to, who would it be?
Steve Ray Vaughan.
Oh wow, that was quick.
Steve. So my lineage is this. I grew up on the blues, big time. Um, there was Kenny Wayne Shepherd is the starting point of all my music. That was the
Okay.
guy my dad started me listening to, and then through Kenny I found Stevie, and then Kenny found his passion through music through Stevie. So like music, you connect people. So after
Yeah.
Kenny with Shepherd is what got me started, and then I go, well, who inspired him? Then I found Stevie, and then I go, well, who is Stevie also inspired? And then I found John, and then that was
Yeah.
when my
Dude,
um
that's
yeah.
the best thing to do. I
He's
love
the
that you
reason I
said
started
that.
playing live music was Mayer. So now I'll never forget the first song I ever played live. Was Shadow Days off Born and Raised. My favorite record he's ever put out. Yeah, now I do live shows all the time. But yeah, there's this lineage with music that you can always connect the dots. You know what I mean?
And it's endless. And you can literally learn, it's like a history lesson because you start with, I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that's how I found I'm a big fan of the band Fish because I learned about Velvet Underground and certain Bowie and Brian Eno
Mm-hmm.
and Robert Fripp and all that stuff, and then the bluegrass stuff, and then the funk stuff,
Yeah,
and the like all of that, and you like kind of once you go who influenced my influence,
sure. Yeah.
the world just goes like this, and
Boom.
and then you take you get 2 years by yourself during a pandemic and Spotify, and it's like let me just tie
Oh,
weights to
all
my
day,
ankles
man.
and dive deep, and start at the very beginning of Bowie and listen to the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
and start at the very beginning of Lou Reed and the whole thing and John Prine and
Mm.
all that stuff and Bootsy Collins and
Oh
all these
yeah.
amazing, like just go as deep as you possibly can, and it's goes deep. And then you find weird, like I get into RL Burnside during the pandemic quite a bit, like and it's just like, man, how cool. And then you go through a little period of that, and then a period of Beastie Boys, and then a period, you know what I mean? So
Then
it's
you find the
it's
newer guys like Kingfish, Christone Kingfish Ingram.
uh-huh.
With all these, yeah, man. It's just phenomenal.
It's great, man.
It is.
Music and comedy and movies and stuff. Thank God for it.
I
Really.
don't. Yeah, I
Thank
don't
God
know.
for it.
I couldn't imagine a world without music. I don't think there would be. I don't even think that's even possible. Just the
It's
thought of
always
that,
that thing
right?
that people say, like, yeah, like
Like especially
if you
during
had to,
COVID, right? Like if there was no music, how would society? I don't know if.
ugh, I don't even want to think about it. I
Yeah.
don't honestly, I don't think I could have gotten through it. And
Nope.
music gets me. Music's the man, I'm weird though, and you may get this because it sounds like your music, like you're like nuts about music like me
Mm-hmm.
too. I'll leave music on in a room
Mm-hmm.
when I know I'm leaving, so I come back to music playing. You understand what I mean by
Yeah, I
that?
get
Like
what you.
I'll put on like like if I knew I was like whatever, taking the dog out for a long walk or doing whatever, like I'll just leave Spotify playing and
Mm-hmm.
come back into like, a treat. Because I can't imagine a life. When I talk to people and they're like, I'm not really into music, I'm like, I don't think I'm really into you. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that, man. But
Yeah.
well, hey, you know what? I'll be seeing you. Me and the girlfriend will come out and see you. You're gonna be at the Comedy Vault in Batavia. That's right that's right my neck of the woods in
Oh,
August.
cool, dude. Let's hang out.
Yeah, man. Definitely come out, check you out, and maybe I don't know if what your schedule will be like. You're there the Thursday the 24th, Friday the 25th, and then Saturday the 26th of August. Yeah, maybe link up, grab something to eat or something. I don't know, but
Yeah, dude, that would be cool. I mean, yeah, it'd be cool to catch up, meet you in person, and
yeah, dude.
chat again, and we'll talk music.
Alrighty, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me, and keep it up, dude.